Until you can sell it, nothing else matters. What does that mean? What does that statement mean exactly? Well, in a nutshell, it means that you can have the greatest product, service, idea, or life-changing information. But if you can't sell it, it's not going to serve you well. If you can't impact other people's lives with it, what good is it? In life, and specifically in business, your ability to sell is going to be the greatest attribute that you have. But you know this already. You do know this already, right? Okay, good. So this video isn't about selling. It's about what to do when selling becomes difficult, or should I say when a slight barrier to the sale gets in your way. This is what we call an objection. It is a reason for the person to say no or walk away. The English dictionary defines an objection as a reason or argument offered in disagreement, opposition, refusal, or disapproval. I need to think about it. I'm not really sure. I need to talk to my wife. If you've been in sales for any amount of time, you've definitely heard an objection, probably one of those. It's part of the process. But one of the things that separates great salespeople from mediocre ones is the ability to effectively overcome objections. So in this video, I'm going to share with you some of my most trusted objection hacks. Now let me be clear. This isn't a video about rebuttals filled with scripts that you can use to diplomatically debate with your prospect or your customer. Those are a dime a dozen. You can find that stuff just about anywhere on the internet. This is different because what I'm going to share with you here are some unconventional objection killers that are designed to subconsciously help overcome the hurdles that stand in your way from gaining compliance or closing the sale. Now, there are actually 10 more of these, which I reveal in my program, Universal Influence 101 Ways to Influence Anyone. You can grab it if you click that link up there on the top. You could learn more about it, and you could probably pick it up at a nice discount. So anyway, let's get started on this. So objection killer number 1, belief affirmation. So dealing with objections is very common in the world of influence. Objection is really the twin brother of agreement. There really is no way to have one without the other. Now, I'm not saying, or this doesn't mean that you should resign yourself to losses and defeats. You really just have to know how to entice the agreement instead of enticing the objection. So the easiest way to handle an objection is by avoiding them in the first place. You see, people hold on to their core beliefs and principles tightly. They're considered very sacred. They have to protect these beliefs because these ideas represent stability in a person's life. So attempting to change them on the spot is going to cause the other person to become overly defensive and probably for the wrong reasons. So to avoid this type of a situation where you have to engage in verbal fencing with the defensive influencee, my suggestion is that you find as many values and beliefs to reaffirm before making your offer. Because as you agree with somebody else's beliefs, their defenses go down until they no longer feel threatened by you, your presence, your ideas, and most of all, your presentation. So a person is going to slam the door on a stranger that could be offering them gold or $1 million. But someone's never going to say no to that best friend who comes up with a crazy idea. Why? Because they have rapport with that person. They have a connection with them. So I want you to strive to become your subject's best friend during the conversation. I want you to make the subject feel as comfortable and trusting as possible so you can avoid objections. Now, of course, the world is not perfect and there still will be objections. But as a person becomes more and more trusting, they will find fewer and fewer reasons to object to what's being laid out on the table. So again, you want to avoid debates that directly counter the subject's long-standing beliefs. Because even if you win, the person is never going to forgive you for debunking their belief. So it's better to harmonize with them as much as possible. Arguments only create friction and distance between you and the subject. And if you find yourself in that type of a situation, the question that you should always ask yourself is, do you want to be right or do you want to be influential? Next objection killer, peak experience. Humans have a funny way of processing and remembering events. If a person enjoyed something, even if it was just 10 minutes of relaxation, that person will remember that experience for the rest of their life. But if they were enjoying something and then that enjoyment was suddenly interrupted, even for like a second, that person is going to remember the end experience, which is the negative part, and forget about all the previous good stuff, the pleasure and enjoyment that they were experiencing before the negative event took place. So if your offer was initially rejected, I want you to ask the subject about their last experience with your competitor. A competitor is any person or business, if you're in the business field, that was previously associated with the subject. Slowly draw out their negative experience and what happened after they had that negative experience, because obviously something happened that led them to you that's preventing them from going back there. So at this point in time, your subject is going to slowly remember the negatives, all the negatives, more than they're going to remember the positives, because that's just simply the way the human mind operates. So after drawing out the negative experiences from your competitor, slowly lead the subject to what you have to offer. And you can do that, and when you do that, they will never have negative experiences again if they choose to stick with your offer. You got to make that clear to them. So make sure that you can back up your claims with actions. Otherwise, the subject is most likely going to leave you again after having a bad experience. So you can use this technique, this strategy, this tactic to transform a no mindset into a yes mindset. Now, it might take some time to take effect, but eventually it's going to work. And it can be used in any situation: business, personal, dating, relationships. Next objection killer is to harmonize. So when an influencer, salesperson, persuasionist, whatever you want to call them, is operating on full power, they usually view the subject as a direct target. The influencer will do everything in his or her power to disprove the other person's beliefs about what's being offered at the moment. And the result of this kind of attack is usually a big failure. Because no matter how hard you insinuate that a person's wrong for holding certain beliefs, that person will simply ignore you, or worse, fight you until the very end. And we know what that means in the game of influence and persuasion. Influencers are at a disadvantage because if the subject walks away, the influencer walks away with nothing but tension and disappointment. So, piggybacking off what I told you earlier, my advice to you when you're faced with the task of persuading someone who's unmoving in their beliefs, don't tell the other person that they're wrong. Don't tell them that they've been holding on to ineffective or false beliefs for their entire life, because that's just going to create a bad situation. Don't say that you are in the right place and he's utterly wrong. Instead, harmonize with the other person. Ask them to imagine themselves performing something for you by accepting another belief. The subject has to realize that they have to realize what they can gain by accepting your offer. And if his beliefs are getting in the way of that, you have to loosen those deeply embedded beliefs by providing new beliefs of your own. Beliefs eventually lead to target behavior. So your goal is to change someone's belief so that their behavior will also change. But here's the thing. You can't change a person's behavior for the long term if their beliefs remain the same. Your subject must experience for themselves what would happen if they changed their beliefs. So you become more than an influencer. You will actually be instructing and guiding this person as they transform their deeply rooted beliefs. That's completely different than just saying that the other person is wrong. If you do that, you're not going to get anywhere. So instead, help them to replace their beliefs. And you can do that by providing a missing piece of information. Because oftentimes people will hold on to their beliefs, even if they know that they're wrong or they figure out that they're wrong, because they just don't want to appear to be wrong. So if you provide them with a new piece of information, it justifies the reason why they had the wrong belief initially. The next killer is to avoid option attachment. So there are 3 things that you always want to avoid when you're pitching an idea, a product, or a service. Buyer's remorse, anticipated regret, and the worst of all 3, option attachment. So buyer's remorse, you probably heard of it, takes place when somebody regrets having purchased something from you. Anticipated regret is the decision not to buy anything because the buyer feels that they're going to wind up regretting it later on. And option attachment is the worst of all 3 because it could leave a potential buyer paralyzed with indecision and cause them to do nothing. So what is option attachment? Option attachment is what happens when a person is faced with too many options that they find very attractive. So to the decision maker, choosing one thing means losing out on the other good thing. So choosing actually equates to instant loss. The option attached individual is also going to feel that if they choose one, the other option will probably look better or more attractive a few days later. Faced with this terrible thing, this loopy conundrum, the option attached subject is going to think about the 2 options over and over and over again, but in reality, they're not going to make a decision. So to you, to the influencer, option attached individuals represent uncertainty and a potential dead end, which is not good for you. Definitely not going to get you the sale. So you fix this problem in 2 steps. First, you have to make sure that during the dialogue, the subject doesn't grow fond or attached to any other option that you present in the effort to explore both sides of the coin. To be safe, showcase an inferior option so that it would not be logical to be found of such an option at all. The decision-making stage should also be as quick as possible. Lead the subject to say yes. Don't wait for him to say yes, because if you allow him to do that, he might grow even more attached to options that you presented to him. The second step has to do with the options involved in your discussion. So don't start with the better option, which is your offer. Start with the poorer option and then transition as fast as you can into the better option. Don't let the subject develop a connection with the option that ultimately you want to be discarded. The next killer, behavioral scripts. Sounds pretty fancy, right? But it's actually very simple. Objections arise because the subject is unsure of where to go. The default response to uncertainty is disagreement. So when people are unsure, they just disagree. Disagreement is equated with stability and avoidance of change. Now, change can either be good or bad, but most humans instinctually associate change with negative consequences. So that's another obstacle that you got to prepare for. Now, if you do encounter a very staunch objection, a very tough, concrete objection, You can try using behavioral scripts to modify the cause of a negative behavior, which is just the belief of the person regarding a particular issue or object. So here's an example of a behavioral script. You open your email in the morning to find out that you've made 300 sales in just one day. You also receive a report that your store has been restocked and your website is up and running perfectly, and you really don't have anything to worry about anymore as you prepare for an amazing day with the family. We take care of everything, night and day, so you can go do the things that you enjoy doing without having to worry about any of that. So when you give a person a script to work with, you're actually giving the person instructions as to how they can modify their own behavior. Now, they might not understand the nature of the script, but that's how it works. The best thing about behavioral scripts is that people tend to repeat the script even after the meeting. So this is powerful. This is how you take your influence and magnify it. Your words and your intentions stay with the subject, even when you're not there with them anymore. But in order for a behavioral script to be really effective, you have to instruct the subject to imagine himself in the ideal situation. You have to do that. It won't work if they just imagine some John Doe or somebody else getting all the benefits. They have to experience the benefits in their own imagination in the first person so that the effect and the impact of the script will linger for days. It'll just keep repeating over and over again. It'll marinate. So in your next meeting, try asking for compliance again. You might be surprised with the subject's answer then, after that's been marinating. The next objection killer is what we call buyer's remorse reversal. So buyer's remorse can completely ruin repeat business because it can dissuade people from having dealings with you again. So before that happens, you have to make sure that the subject has been what we call inoculated against buyer's remorse even before he leaves you. So imagine that you're talking right now with a person who seems to be suffering from buyer's remorse. They just bought something from you because your offer was so tempting, so amazing, so irresistible that they just could not say no. They took out their credit card and they bought it. And now they're telling you that they're not going to be ordering anything ever again because of reason A, reason B, whatever. What do you do to end this? How do you fix this irrational remorse? Well, you can inoculate this person by supporting his decision outright and by helping them prepare for the remorse that's going to be coming. So all you want to do is turn around and say something like this to the person. We both know that you invested a lot into this service because you want your home and business to be secure. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. It's for your own peace of mind. What are you going to tell people if they ask you about your decision to invest a sizable amount for your peace of mind? So after dropping that vital question, you want to sit and let the subject think of ways as to how they're going to fully justify their decision to take your offer. By doing this, the subject won't feel hopeless and helpless when those pangs of buyer's remorse start kicking in. See, even if no one really asks the subject why they invested their time, money, energy, resources for your offer, the justification that they've crafted in their mind is going to be enough to halt the buyer's remorse. Because in the end, other people's words don't really matter. What matters is what the subject thinks and feels. If he's defeated by buyer's remorse, if he or she lets that get the best of them, you can forget about repeat business. But if they're successful in battling that garbage, your influence is going to stay with them for the long haul. The next killer is to empathize. So empathy is defined as the action of understanding, being aware, being sensitive, as well as vicariously experiencing the feelings, the thoughts, and the experiences of another person. To be empathetic means you're consciously putting yourself in the other person's shoes in an effort to understand them and to communicate with them more effectively. Now, this might not sound like a solution to dealing with objections, but if you look at the nature of objections, you're going to see why this can be an effective tool. So let me repeat a point I made once before. People only say no because you haven't shown them that you can bring them to your target destination safely. That's the only reason. The no will stay there until you're able to show that you will not cause any harm or grief in any way. Empathy is a fast and easy way to project a genuinely caring persona during a social interaction. So to be empathetic means you have to know and show that you're interested and that you're an active listener, right? So you're there not to take away someone's hard-earned resources, but to add to those resources through whatever you have to offer. So when a person keeps saying no to you, all that simply means is that the trust and rapport that you should have built hasn't really been built yet. So if you're unsure as to how to genuinely express your care for the other party, you can ask them questions that will help them relate what they want to achieve and what kinds of solutions they want to see. Now, as that person begins to share their thoughts, you have to continue asking questions so that you'll get really a more crystal clear picture of what's going on in their mind. Statements like, "I feel the same way about that issue," can be used to reinforce the idea that you're there to solve the other person's problems and not to add to them. Now, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it, leave a comment, and share.